Hi everyone, Sean here and welcome to Lines in Sand. Today I want to take our focus away from Giza and instead take a look at a single person, Imhotep. Not the Imhotep from the Mummy movies, as awesome as Boris Karloff may have been in the 1930s version, and as dreadful as the fight scenes between Arnold Vosloo and a scorpion version of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson may be in the remake around 70 years later. We want to focus instead today on the real Imhotep. So who was Imhotep? Many credit him for being the architect behind the first ever pyramid, the step pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara, built in the 3rd dynasty. But is there sufficient evidence for this? Much later on, many years after his death and in the New Kingdom period, around 500 BC, Imhotep would ascend to full godhood after centuries of idolation as Egypt's inventor of healing. He would be canonically deified and worshipped as a god both in Greece and Egypt. But why hasn't a tomb for this revered character of ancient Egypt ever been found? Has it been ransacked, abandoned and lost to time, or simply not yet discovered? Does a tomb even really exist? What is Imhotep's link to the so-called buried pyramid of Sekhemkhet Djoserti? This is what I want to address in this video. So, as always, get a drink, get comfortable, and let's begin. There is no doubt the 20th century movies about the mummy served to further popularize the name Imhotep, with, dare I say, modern or Western cultures, or at least those not too familiar with ancient Egypt. I don't doubt that they brought people to perhaps research the real Imhotep, but there is so much more to this man than being the name of a villain in a bunch of terrible Hollywood movies. Well, maybe not terrible, but you know what I'm saying. Imhotep held an important position in Egypt's 3rd dynasty, serving as the vizier to Pharaoh Djoser, who is thought to have reigned in the 26th century BC. Different sources online give different dates of rule, but the remaining constant is that Imhotep was the pharaoh's advisor, architect, sage, and general minister. He is credited as designing and building the step pyramid at Saqqara, which, if true, could mean that Imhotep was instrumental in the Egyptian development of moving from mastabas to huge pyramid structures. Knowingly or not, Imhotep could have ushered in a whole new era of construction and changed Egypt forever. Perhaps we would not be here today talking about this if not for Imhotep. Now, I found evidence linking Imhotep to the design and construction of the step pyramid pretty difficult to find. It seems to be the accepted train of thought held not only by Egyptologists but historical sources in general, but none of them seem to offer evidence that links him to the pyramid. I understand, though, that this is very difficult to do, and famously no Egyptian plans or documents concerning the design or construction of pyramids were ever found. I also understand that if Imhotep was known to be the vizier and architect of the pharaoh, then it is very likely that he played a large part in the pyramid's construction. That is to assume, of course, that the pharaohs built the pyramids, but hey, let's not go down that route today. It is perhaps also very easy to take a look at the step pyramid of Djoser and think, well, it's kind of like a bunch of mastabas stacked on top of each other, and again, it's easy to see how this evolution happened when you compare the two forms of tombs. But I would love to explore the cultic and no doubt religious aspects that led to Imhotep needing to design the burial place of Djoser in such a way for the first time. It wouldn't surprise me at all if there was more to this and I have just not come across it yet, but for now, for the purposes of this video, let's just run with the common prevailing thought that Imhotep designed the first step pyramid at Saqqara. It is likely that he lived a long and healthy life and outlived several pharaohs. Joshua J. Mark, writing for the World History Encyclopedia in 2016, suggests that Imhotep could have served as many as 4 different 3rd dynasty kings of Egypt. After his death, Imhotep was revered by the Egyptian people. Eventually, over 2,000 years later, he officially entered the pantheon of gods. This happened during the Persian conquest of Egypt, but worship of Imhotep only increased into Greek and Roman times, and many would make pilgrimages in great numbers to come and worship Imhotep. Bob Brier in an appendix to his book, The Secret of the Great Pyramid, which is mostly about John B. Houdin's internal ramp theory, tells of how thousands of ibis birds were bred in captivity before being sacrificed and mummified in pots. These were then sold to the many pilgrims that came to Saqqara to worship Imhotep, who in turn could give the mummified ibises as an offering to Imhotep. It was thought that doing so would win favor with the now god, and in return he would bless them with the remedies for their ailments. But where was the revered Imhotep buried? Surely the tomb of such a prominent and respected figure, both in life and afterwards as a deity, would be known. Perhaps it was for a time. It is not clear to me where in Saqqara the many pilgrims would come to worship Imhotep. Some sources, such as the previously mentioned Bob Brier, say that they came to his tomb to offer the ibises. Others, such as the Encyclopedia Britannica, say instead that they came to his temples, both at Memphis and at the island of Philae. Perhaps they are one and the same, at least in regards to the temple and possible tomb at Memphis, a Saqqara. The temple of Imhotep at Memphis was built around 2,000 years after Imhotep's death, right when the worship of him was becoming incredibly popular in the later dynastic periods. It was thought at one point that the temple was built perhaps on top of Imhotep's original tomb, but we'll cover this in more detail in a few moments. It was the discovery of the pots of mummified birds, however, as well as other mummified animals such as baboons, that convinced esteemed British Egyptologist Professor Walter Brian Emery that he was on the right track of uncovering Imhotep's tomb. Emery was not the first explorer or Egyptologist to uncover this necropolis of mummified animals, but his research here went far deeper than any that came before. In the 1960s, great anticipation hung in the air as Emery led digs in the Saqqara region, which in turn led to the discovery of thousands upon thousands of mummified ibis birds stored in subterranean excavations. I've had trouble placing when this work began. I've found sources placing the digs starting in 1962 and others placing the start date in 1966. I did find an article from the Guardian newspaper archive dated 8th of February 1969 in which the reporter Walter Schwartz visited Professor Emery and his wife at the site, several months after the discovery of what is said to be an unknown temple or tomb. There was a rush to complete the dig before the season ends and Emery's funding runs out, but the author has time to share a beer with Emery and they discuss the finds from the dig. I'm not sure which of the mastabas that Emery discovered matches the tomb that is referenced in this article. I would assume that it would be Mastaba 3518, as I believe it would be the last one that Emery would find, so this matches up nicely with the timeline of 1969, but making assumptions is not particularly wise. For more information on the work of Professor Emery and the more technical details of the digs and the mastabas which he excavated and discovered during his time at Saqqara, I would direct you to the articles and YouTube videos by British Egyptologist and author Chris Naunton, which are linked in the description of this video. The discovery of these incredible storerooms full of ibises, baboons and other animals were, I suppose, an accident. The purpose of Emery's work was to excavate north of the step pyramid of Zoser in order to discover the tomb of Imhotep. The rooms full of mummified animals, which turned out to be an enormous underground gallery stuffed to the ceiling with thousands of pots, are nowadays known as the Sacred Animal Necropolis. It was the link between the ibis and the baboon with the god Thoth, which no doubt excited Emery and his workforce and spurred them on. Perhaps Imhotep's tomb was just around the corner. In his time as a deity, Imhotep was often equated with Thoth, for whom mathematics and medicine were also listed as skills. We will address his discovery of Mastaba 3518 again shortly, but unfortunately for Walter Brian Emery, his part in this story comes to an end as he suffered a stroke whilst in the field and then later passed away in hospital in Cairo in 1971. His body of work and his seemingly tireless spirit for discovery and for the work itself no doubt leaves him in memory as a well-respected and well-missed member of the archaeological and Egyptological communities. Determined as he was to do so, it seems Emery did not unearth the lost tomb of the architect Imhotep. Let us consider then some of the possible burial places for Imhotep. The first being the most mundane and even perhaps the most probable answer is that Imhotep's tomb is still out there, undiscovered, in the sands of Saqqara, or perhaps even elsewhere. The second outcome that we have to accept is that we may never find the tomb of Imhotep. Perhaps it has been destroyed, even plundered in antiquity, and now lost to time. Perhaps it never existed in the first place, but personally I find this to be an unlikely scenario. Then we must consider the step pyramid of Djoser, a controversial theory perhaps, but it has been noted that the inscriptions and carvings found within the step pyramid contain not only Djoser's name, but also the name of Imhotep. Some scholars attribute this to Djoser being so impressed with his pyramid that he had Imhotep's name inscribed alongside his own. But could this mean that Imhotep is also buried in the step pyramid? Before we consider this as far-fetched and not possible, remember that the main piece of evidence tying the Great Pyramid to Pharaoh Khufu is a cartouche of graffiti mentioning the pharaoh's name that was found inside the pyramid in Davidson's chamber, a relief chamber above the king's chamber. There are also two tombs within the step pyramid complex, which combined with the two names on the pyramid's inscriptions immediately raises eyebrows. The South Tomb, an external structure to the step pyramid, and says Mark Lehner in The Complete Pyramids, it is a replica of the step pyramid substructure. However, he does go on to say that the South Tomb, as well as other buildings and dummy structures in the step pyramid complex, were finished and then buried during the first phase of the step pyramid's construction. This placed the sealing off of the South Tomb into the timeline of the first few years of the step pyramid's construction, when the pyramid was just at its first mastaba-like layer. Imhotep would have been very much alive and well at this point, and it's more likely that the South Tomb serves as part of the dummy complex around Djoser. Mark Lehner actually writes that the South Tomb is too small for a human burial and instead is perhaps a tomb for Pharaoh Djoser's Ka. However, without wanting to lose the scope of this video, I don't understand this, as the Ka and the Ba and the Ak are separate elements of the soul, the Ka being the part that goes off to the afterlife. Wouldn't this be the part that leaves the pharaoh during the whole mummification and then placement within a pyramid, the whole Osiris-Orion ritual? If anyone knows any more about this, as in why the Ka may need a separate burial to the pharaoh himself, then please do reach out and let me know. To the southwest of the step pyramid of Djoser, past the Unas pyramid, is another mysterious pyramid complex, that of the so-called buried pyramid, the unfinished pyramid of Sekhemkhet. This is another incredible structure. Admittedly, it is not much to look at above ground, as the pyramid was never finished. Below ground, however, it is a maze of magazines and smaller corridors, all of which are off-limits to the public today. Deep inside this pyramid was the mysterious alabaster sarcophagus, a box that may or may not have been a sarcophagus, please don't crucify me in the comment, which was a marvel in of itself and its design, and a total mystery as it was sealed shut but contained no body when opened by explorers. The pyramid is, as I said, attributed to Sekhemkhet Djoserti, who succeeded Djoser to the throne of Egypt. Sekhemkhet supposedly only reigned for 6 years, and therefore his pyramid was never finished. How does this fit into the Imhotep mystery then? Well, for one, it is likely that Imhotep was somehow involved in the construction of the pyramid, its similar plan of design, and of course Sekhemkhet's immediate reign following Djoser. Imhotep was said, as we've covered, to have served multiple kings after Djoser. Another link is that, once again, just like the step pyramid of Djoser, Imhotep's name has been found carved in inscriptions inside the buried pyramid too. The buried pyramid complex, if we can even call it that, also has a south tomb, much like that of the step pyramid. This was, once more according to Mark Lehner, not completed. Inside its short underground tunnel system, a wooden coffin was found, but inside were the remains of a 2-year-old child and not the remains of Imhotep. So where does that leave us? A brief recap then. Professor Emery, on the trail of hunting Imhotep's tomb, uncovered a series of mastabas, numbers 3508, 3509, 3510, and 3518 or 3518, I'm sure amongst others. There is also, of course, the so-called secret animal necropolis, which we have also touched on in this video. On top of that, we have other structures at Saqqara with strong links to Imhotep. such as the Step Pyramid of Zoser, the Buried Pyramid of Sekhemkhet, and their subsequent secondary tomb systems. In regards to the mastabas, 3508 seems connected physically to the sacred animal necropolis. Some sources indicate that some mastabas intended for human remains were later reused, at least in regards to their burial shafts, for the animal offerings at Saqqara. This diagram, shown here on a very illuminating article at cambridge.org, source from the Egypt Exploration Society, shows the mastaba and its burial shaft leading down to the necropolis full of ibis birds. Mastaba 3509 apparently is much the same, but there is no diagram, at least not one that I could get my hands on. Mastaba 3510 seems to also have a direct connection to the Ibis Galleries, or necropolis, in particular the southern Ibis Gallery, which Emery found connected to 3510 after excavating 10 meters down the mastaba's burial shaft. These three mastabas appear to clearly have been repurposed from their original function to fit into the sacred animal necropolis, and it is unclear as to whom these tombs originally belonged. Could Imhotep have been buried in one of these tombs? Let's go back a moment to that final mastaba in the line of those discovered by Professor Walter Brighton Emery, number 3518. Whether this was the absolute last one he unearthed, or just the last one in the season of 1969 into 1970, I'm not completely sure. When you stop researching pyramids and start researching mastabas, information becomes infinitely more difficult to find. There are perhaps more academic sources that I am not able to access as a lowly member of the public armed with a search engine and some spare time, but nevertheless, this is all I have to work with for now. If you do a search online for Mastaba 3518, you'll see a few sources citing that Tomb 3518 is thought to be the resting place of Imhotep. It seems Emery may have thought that, and that line of thinking prevails today. But where is the evidence for this? Well, honestly, I can't find any, either for or against this case. It's been driving me around the twist, and I don't know if I'm looking for something that just isn't there, or if I am locked out of further investigations or information on Tomb 3518 that can only be obtained by contacting academic organisations like universities or accessing the archives of archaeological organisations such as the previously mentioned Egypt Exploration Society. All online sources, many of which I've listed in the video description, come to the point of touching on 3518 and then stopping at that point. Is there anything special about this particular mastaba? Is it connected to any of the sacred animal galleries? Was it ever even properly excavated? Do diagrams exist of it? All I can find is this picture taken by Chris Norton on his blog, which is linked again in the video description. Mastaba 3518 then leaves a huge question mark over the matter of Imhotep's resting place. And it's here, frustratingly, where I must leave off, at least for now. I have other avenues of research to address in the short term, but I can already tell that the mystery of Imhotep, or perhaps of just that, of Mastaba 3518, is most certainly going to draw me back in. I do not feel like this line of inquiry is quite over just yet. Nevertheless, I find myself currently at a roadblock with Mastaba 3518, so if anyone has any information, sources, or links of interest to share, then I would be eternally grateful. But for now, let's take this discussion to the comments section. What do you think became of Imhotep? Can his tomb ever be found? Out of the possibilities discussed, which one do you think is the most realistic? Are there other candidates for the areas that I've not mentioned in this video where he could be buried? Is this whole thing a complete waste of time? Please let me know your thoughts below, and hopefully we can have a nice discussion around all of this. As always, I want to thank you all for watching. If you've made it all the way to the end of the video and are not yet subscribed, please consider joining the channel, as your support really makes a world of difference. I hope you've enjoyed this little trip away from Giza to Saqqara, and I will speak with you all soon in the next video. So take care, and bye for now.